Let me begin with a dangerous truth. Most people will never become exceptional, not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack patience. We live in an age addicted to speed, overnight success, instant visibility, quick monetization, viral recognition. But mastery does not respond to urgency. It responds to depth. And depth is built in silence. Look carefully at history. Every individual who reshaped their field, Leonardo da Vinci, Mozart, Darwin, Edison, followed a pattern that modern culture ignores. Years of obscurity, years of apprenticeship, years of deliberate practice, years of failure. The world sees the masterpiece. It does not see the decade of invisible preparation. And here is the irony. The very phase people avoid, the slow, uncomfortable, ego-crushing phase of learning, is the exact phase that creates power. Because mastery is not about talent. It is about transformation. It is about rewiring your mind to perceive differently, to see patterns others overlook, to anticipate shifts before they happen, to remain calm while others panic, to position yourself while others react. Most people operate reactively. Masters operate strategically. Most people chase money. Masters build rare and valuable skills. Most people seek attention. Masters build leverage. And leverage, once constructed, changes the entire game. Imagine this. What if instead of asking, how can I succeed quickly, you asked, how can I become so skilled, so perceptive, so strategically positioned that success becomes inevitable? That shift alone separates amateurs from masters, because the goal is not applause. The goal is autonomy. The goal is autonomy. Autonomy over your time, autonomy over your income, autonomy over your decisions. And autonomy is built through ownership of skill, of reputation, of assets, of systems. The apprentice trades time for money. The master designs systems that work without constant supervision. The amateur reacts to trends. The master anticipates them. The amateur seeks comfort. The master seeks growth. Over the next hour, we will dismantle the myths of talent and overnight success. We will study the architecture of mastery, the apprenticeship phase, the creative, active phase, the evolution toward intuitive intelligence, the cultivation of social power, the construction of financial leverage, the psychology of long-term dominance. You will see why emotional control is more valuable than brilliance, why ownership beats income, why strategic patience outperforms raw ambition, and why the ultimate reward of mastery is not fame but sovereignty. Because when you master yourself, your impulses, your attention, your discipline, the external world begins to bend in subtle ways, not immediately, but inevitably. The question is not whether you are capable of mastery. The question is whether you are willing to endure the path. Let us begin. Every human being carries within them a latent force, a unique configuration of strengths, inclinations, curiosities, and obsessions that, if cultivated properly, can elevate them to extraordinary levels of power and influence. And yet, most people never discover this force. They drift. They follow prescribed paths. They obey conventions. They mistake comfort for security and distraction for fulfillment. Mastery is not a gift granted at birth. It is not luck. It is not merely talent. It is a process, a transformation, a deliberate and often uncomfortable journey from dependency to autonomy, from imitation to innovation, from confusion to clarity. If you examine history carefully, you will notice a pattern. The individuals who shape eras, Leonardo da Vinci, Charles Darwin, Martha Graham, Henry Ford, they did not begin as masters. They began as apprentices, awkward, uncertain, hungry, and most importantly, patient. The first phase of mastery is what I call the apprenticeship phase. It is the phase most people resist because it requires humility. We live in an age intoxicated by speed. You were told to scale quickly, monetize quickly, become visible quickly. But nature does not reward haste. It rewards depth. When Leonardo first entered Verrocchio's workshop, he did not immediately paint masterpieces. He ground pigments, he observed. Technique, he trained his eye relentlessly. Years passed before he developed his own voice. The modern mind interprets such patience as weakness, but patience is power in disguise. In the apprenticeship phase, your goal is not recognition. It is absorption. You must become a sponge. Learn the rules of your chosen field thoroughly, not to remain bound by them, but to internalize them so deeply that they become instinctive. Study structure, study history, study failure. Study the psychology of those who came before you. Most people skim the surface of knowledge. Masters penetrate it. Now, here's something crucial. You must choose your field wisely, not randomly, not because it is fashionable, not because it pays immediately. You must choose based on what I call your life's task. From childhood, certain patterns appear, certain fascinations persist, certain skills feel more natural. These are not accidents, they are clues. Society often pressures you away from these inclinations toward practicality. But the paradox is this: true practicality lies in long-term alignment. When you work in a field that resonates with your natural inclinations, your energy becomes renewable, effort becomes less draining, obsession becomes possible. And obsession, controlled, focused obsession, is a requirement for mastery. Now let us address money because it is unavoidable. In the apprenticeship phase, your financial goal is survival with strategic positioning. You are not yet optimizing for luxury. You are optimizing for skill acquisition. Too many people choose careers based solely on immediate income. They sacrifice long-term leverage for short-term comfort. This is a strategic error. Skill is the ultimate asset. Money earned without skill can disappear quickly. Skill, once developed deeply, cannot be easily taken from you. Think of it as intellectual capital. The deeper your knowledge, the more valuable your decisions become. And valuable decisions generate wealth far more sustainably than temporary trends. Financial freedom, therefore, does not begin with investing money. It begins with investing in yourself. Every hour spent mastering your craft compounds. The world increasingly rewards rare and valuable skills. If you are replaceable, you are vulnerable. If you are indispensable, you have leverage, and leverage creates negotiating power. Negotiating power increases income. Income invested wisely compounds into independence. So you see, mastery precedes financial freedom. It is not the other way around. During your apprenticeship, you must also embrace what I call a productive failure. You will make mistakes. You will misjudge. You will embarrass yourself. This is not a sign you are incapable. It is a sign you are learning. Failure exposes weaknesses. Weakness, once identified, can be corrected. Those who avoid failure avoid growth. But here is the deeper lesson. You must detach your ego from your performance. If criticism wounds you deeply, you will resist feedback. If you resist feedback, you stagnate. Ego is the enemy of apprenticeship. Humility accelerates growth. Observe masters closely. They are not defensive. They are curious. Curiosity fuels improvement. Now consider your environment. Who surrounds you? In the apprenticeship phase, proximity is everything. Place yourself near those more skilled than you. Absorb their habits. Study their discipline. Notice how they think, not just what they produce. Thought patterns determine output. This proximity may require sacrifice, relocation, reduced income, discomfort. But remember, positioning determines trajectory. A mediocre environment produces mediocre growth. An intense environment forges excellence. Another element often misunderstood is time. Mastery requires years. This is not negotiable, but the years pass regardless. The question is, will they pass with intention? If you commit 5 to 10 years to focused, strategic learning, you will separate yourself dramatically from the majority. Most people change direction too frequently. They chase novelty. They mistake excitement for purpose. Masters endure monotony. Repetition refines instinct. Instinct accelerates execution. Execution builds reputation, builds opportunity. Opportunity builds wealth. But this chain begins with repetition. Now let us speak of attention. In our era, attention is fragmented. Notifications, social media, endless consumption. But mastery requires deep focus. Deep focus strengthens neural pathways. Shallow engagement weakens them. Your ability to concentrate for extended periods is a competitive advantage. Train it deliberately. Schedule distraction-free blocks. Protect them fiercely. Your mind is your primary instrument. Do not allow it to be hijacked. Finally, understand this. The apprenticeship phase is invisible to the world. There will be little applause, little recognition. Sometimes doubt will whisper, "Is this worth it?" It is. Because what you are building is internal architecture. Once built, it cannot easily be dismantled. When the time comes to move into the next phase, the creative active phase, you will draw upon this deep reservoir of knowledge and skill. Without apprenticeship, creativity is shallow. With apprenticeship, creativity is revolutionary. Remember this quote, The future belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in creative ways. So in this first stage, do not rush to shine. Rush to understand. Rush to deepen. Rush to strengthen your foundation. Because mastery is not a destination. It is a transformation. And transformation begins in humility. Now you have endured the apprenticeship phase. You have humbled yourself before the craft. You have absorbed structure. You have trained your mind to focus. You have sacrificed short-term applause for long-term leverage, but there comes a moment, subtle at first, when imitation is no longer enough. A restlessness appears. You begin to see patterns others do not. You begin to question convention. You sense that the rules you have learned so carefully are not permanent truths. They are frameworks waiting to be reshaped. This is the beginning of the creative active phase. Most never reach it. Because most remain psychologically trapped in apprenticeship, they become technicians. They execute skillfully, but without vision. And in doing so, they cap their own power. The creative active phase requires something far more dangerous than humility. It requires courage. The courage to depart from the known. History provides us with countless examples. After years of studying anatomy, engineering, painting, and mechanics, Leonardo did not merely replicate his teachers. He fused disciplines. He connected art with science. He turned observation into innovation. After absorbing the financial systems of his era, John D. Rockefeller did not merely participate in the oil industry, he restructured it. After mastering language and rhythm, Shakespeare bent grammar itself to his imagination. The pattern is clear. Mastery requires first absorbing the system, then transcending it. But transcendence is impossible without deep internalization. You cannot break rules effectively if you do not understand them intimately. Now let us examine what happens psychologically during this phase. As your competence grows, so does your independence. You begin to rely less on instruction and more on instinct. This instinct is not it is accumulated experience compressed into intuition. When you have spent thousands of hours immersed in your field, your brain recognizes patterns subconsciously. You see opportunities others overlook. You anticipate problems before they manifest. This is where leverage begins to multiply. Because now you are not merely executing tasks, you are shaping outcomes. In financial terms, this is the difference between earning wages and creating assets. The apprentice trades time for money. The master designs systems that generate value beyond their direct labor. Consider this carefully. If you remain dependent on trading hours for income, your growth is capped by time itself. But when your ideas, systems, or intellectual property begin to generate returns, you move toward economic sovereignty. The creative active phase is where financial freedom truly becomes attainable. Because this is where you shift from competence to originality. And originality commands premium value. The marketplace rewards rarity. If your skill set is common, you compete. If your skill set is rare and integrated, you dominate. Integration is key. In this phase, you must expand laterally. Study adjacent disciplines. Connect fields others see as unrelated. Innovation lives at intersections. Darwin combined geology, biology, and observation from global travel. Steve Jobs fused technology with design and psychology. When you combine multiple competencies, you create uniqueness. Uniqueness eliminates competition. Now understand something subtle. This phase will provoke resistance, not just externally, but internally. Your mind will crave the comfort of the familiar. Your ego will fear criticism. Your environment may resist your evolution. People prefer predictable versions of you. Growth disrupts expectation, but stagnation is more dangerous than criticism. Let me state this clearly. The greatest risk is not failure. It is mediocrity sustained by comfort. You must learn to tolerate isolation. When you begin thinking independently, you will temporarily lose belonging. That is the price of originality. But originality creates authority. Authority creates influence. Influence expands opportunity. Opportunity expands income. Income, when managed with intelligence, expands freedom. Now let us speak about strategy. In the creative active phase, visibility matters, but only after substance. Never invert this order. Many today seek audience before skill. They build platforms without foundation. This creates fragile influence. When pressure arrives, they collapse. What? Instead, build depth first, then communicate selectively. Position yourself not as loud, but as indispensable. There is power in restraint. Scarcity increases perceived value. Overexposure reduces mystique. Masters reveal strategically. Now consider long-term financial positioning. Once your originality produces increased income, you must resist lifestyle inflation. This is critical. The moment income rises, most people expand expenses proportionally. They trap themselves in golden cages. Instead, maintain controlled expenses. Channel surplus into investments, equity, assets. Ownership stakes. Intellectual property. Ownership compounds. Consumption depletes. The creative master understands delayed gratification. You are not optimizing for the present quarter. You are building decades of leverage. Now let us examine intuition more deeply. In this phase, you begin to trust your internal compass. But intuition must be tested. Do not become reckless. Prototype ideas. Experiment deliberately. Study feedback without ego. Refine continuously. The master is never static. They evolve. Rigidity is death. Flexibility anchored in deep principles is strength. Observe how great generals operated. They studied terrain meticulously, but in battle, they adapted fluidly. Preparation plus adaptability equals dominance. The same applies in business, art, leadership. You must remain a student, even as you innovate. This prevents arrogance. Arrogance blinds. Blindness invites downfall. History is filled with brilliant individuals destroyed by overconfidence. Guard against this, stay curious, stay observant. Now let us address energy. Creative work demands intensity. Protect your mental energy ruthlessly. Limit distractions, limit negative influences, limit shallow engagements. Energy misallocated weakens output. High-level performance requires strategic rest as well. Burnout is not mastery. It is mismanagement. Sustainable intensity wins. Remember this, a mastery is not a function of genius. It is a function of deep engagement over time. Deep engagement creates differentiation. Differentiation creates value. Value creates wealth. Wealth, if structured properly, creates independence. But independence must serve purpose. Otherwise, it dissolves into indulgence. In this phase, your identity shifts. You are no longer merely learning the game. You are influencing it. But this is not the final stage. There remains one more transformation. Beyond creativity lies intuitive mastery, where skill becomes second nature and vision expands beyond self-interest. In the next part, we will move into that highest stage, where mastery integrates power, social intelligence, and strategic foresight into a cohesive force. For now, understand this. Imitation builds foundation. Innovation builds authority. Authority builds leverage, builds freedom. And freedom, when anchored in discipline, builds legacy. Now we enter the most misunderstood dimension of mastery. You have endured apprenticeship. You have crossed into creative independence. You have begun producing original work. You have increased your leverage. But there is a level beyond skill and beyond innovation. It is the level of intuitive mastery. This is where effort becomes invisible, where decisions appear effortless to outside. Where timing becomes precise, where your presence alone alters environments. Most people assume this stage is mystical, that it belongs only to prodigies or geniuses. This is a misunderstanding. Intuitive mastery is the result of years, sometimes decades, of deep immersion. It is pattern recognition operating at subconscious speed. When a chess grandmaster glances at the board and immediately senses danger, it is not magic. It is thousands of patterns stored and compressed. When a seasoned investor scans a balance sheet and instantly detects weakness, it is not instinct in the abstract sense. It is trained perception. When a master negotiator enters a room and feels tension before a word is spoken, it is accumulated social intelligence. At this level, you are no longer thinking step by step. You are seeing wholes. The shift from analytical thinking to holistic perception marks the arrival of mastery. But let us be precise. This stage is not passive. It requires continual refinement. Many reach competence and stagnate. They rely on past success. They stop stretching themselves. This is the beginning of decline. True masters deliberately reintroduce difficulty. They seek new constraints. They study emerging shifts. They anticipate disruption. Because power is not static. Power flows toward those who adapt. Now let us speak about time. At the intuitive level, your relationship with time changes. You think long-term instinctively. Short-term fluctuations do not disturb you. In markets, in career, in reputation. You understand cycle. You recognize that temporary losses are often investments in larger positioning. This psychological stability is rare, and rarity creates dominance. Consider Warren Buffett. He does not react to daily volatility. He understands underlying value. This is mastery applied to capital. Financial freedom at this stage is not emotional, it is structural. But this is where enduring power resides. In the next phase, we will examine how to integrate all dimensions: skill, creativity, intuition, social intelligence, and strategic wealth building into a unified philosophy of life. Because mastery is not merely professional, it is existential. It shapes how you think, how you move, how you allocate time, how you handle adversity. It becomes identity. And identity, once forged at this level, is unshakable. Understand this. Amateurs react. Professionals execute. Masters anticipate, and anticipation is power. We must slow down here, because this is the stage where most talented individuals sabotage themselves. You now possess skill. You now possess originality. You have begun sensing patterns others cannot see. But there is a danger hidden at this level. It is the danger of illusion. When your competence rises, the world begins responding differently to you. A recognition increases, opportunities increase, income increases, and subtly, so does ego. This is where many plateau. They confuse early mastery with final mastery, but mastery is not a peak. It is an expanding horizon. At this deeper third phase, what truly separates the master from the merely successful is psychological depth. Skill alone is insufficient. You must understand yourself. Every master throughout history confronted internal resistance, fear of failure at higher stakes, fear of surpassing mentors, fear of visibility, fear of decline. These fears do not disappear with achievement, they intensify, because now there is something to lose. At this stage, you must develop what I call emotional stamina. Emotional stamina allows you to operate calmly at elevated stakes. Observe elite performers, investors, generals, artists, entrepreneurs. Their defining trait is not excitement, it is composure. Composure under pressure magnifies decision quality, and decision quality determines long-term positioning. Let us examine something fundamental. The higher you rise, the more political your environment becomes. When you were an apprentice, you were ignored. When you became creative, you were tolerated. Now that you are powerful, you are observed. And observation changes dynamics. Others project onto you. They envy, they compete, they attempt alignment, they test you. If you lack social intelligence, you will miscalculate. Mastery requires reading invisible currents. Watch how people respond when you succeed. Watch who grows silent. Watch who grows overly enthusiastic. Watch who subtly resists. Power reveals character. Not just yours, but others. At this level, naive transparency becomes dangerous. You must practice strategic openness. Reveal enough to build trust. Conceal enough to preserve leverage. There is elegance in restraint. Now let us turn inward again. The master must avoid rigidity. Early success often comes from a particular formula, but formulas expire, markets evolve, technology shifts, cultural taste changes. If you attach your identity to one method, you will resist adaptation, and resistance to adaptation is decay. Instead, attach your identity to principles. Principles endure. Tactics evolve. For example, value creation is a principle. The platform through which you create value will change. Ownership is a principle. The asset class you own may evolve. Strategic patience is a principle. The opportunities you wait for will differ. Principles anchor you while allowing flexibility. This balance creates longevity. Now we must address wealth at a higher level. When you move beyond earning into influence, your financial strategy must mature. The amateur asks, how much can I make? The master asks, how much control do I retain? Control is more important than income. High income with zero control is disguised dependency. Moderate income with ownership and flexibility is leverage. This is why equity matters. This is why intellectual property matters. This is why brand equity matters. When your name carries weight, opportunities seek you. That is asymmetric advantage. But brand without substance collapses. Substance without visibility stagnates. You must integrate both. Let us examine time once more. At intuitive levels, you begin to understand timing as a weapon. When to speak, when to remain silent, when to launch, when to withdraw. Impatience destroys timing. Greed accelerates entry at the wrong moment. Fear delays exit at the right moment. Emotional neutrality sharpens timing. Oh. This is why mastery is deeply psychological. It is less about doing more. It is about reacting less. Stillness becomes strength. In financial markets, those who trade constantly often underperform. Those who wait for high-probability opportunities outperform. The same principle applies to career moves, partnerships, expansions. Selective aggression beats constant motion. Now consider energy management. At higher levels, complexity increases. More stakeholders, more decisions, more noise. Without disciplined energy allocation, you fragment. The master learns to eliminate ruthlessly. Low-value meetings, low-value relationships, low-value distractions. Simplicity at the top requires courage, because saying no reduces short-term gratification. But saying no preserves strategic focus. Focus compounds results. Compounded results create dominance. Now we arrive at something deeper. Mastery eventually becomes internalized identity. You no longer perform discipline. You are disciplined. You no longer attempt focus. You operate with focus. You no longer chase growth. You default to growth. Identity level change is irreversible, and irreversible identity is power. But beware, identity must remain flexible at the edges. Arrogance often hides behind identity. Remain teachable. Study younger innovators. Study adjacent industries. Study failure stories. The moment you believe you have transcended learning, you begin descending. History punishes complacency. Let us speak briefly about legacy economics. There are three economic tiers: earners, owners, architects. Earners exchange time, owners exchange capital. Architects design systems others operate within. Mastery aspires toward architecture. When you design systems, businesses, movements, intellectual frameworks, your influence expands geometrically. Systems scale beyond your personal effort, but designing systems requires patience and clarity. Clarity requires solitude. This is why masters retreat periodically. Isolation refines thinking. Noise distorts it. Now imagine your life 20 years forward. If you continue compounding skill, network, assets, reputation, where will you stand? Compounding works invisibly at first, then suddenly. This is true in finance. This is true in knowledge. This is true in influence. Most quit during invisible growth. Masters persist, and persistence during invisibility creates eventual inevitability. Let me leave you with this. At this stage, your greatest enemy is not competition. It is stagnation. Stagnation disguises comfort. Stagnation disguises reputation. Stagnation disguises enough. There is nothing wrong with peace, but there is danger in psychological settling. Continue refining, continue observing, continue integrating, because mastery is not a moment of arrival. It is a continuous sharpening, and the sharper you become, the less force you need to apply. That is true power. Now we move into a dimension of mastery that few ever consciously enter. Up to this point, you have built skill. You have cultivated originality. You have strengthened intuition. You have learned to read power dynamics. But now we must address something deeper than performance. We must address transformation of perception, because the highest level of mastery is not about what you do. It is about how you see. Most people experience reality passively. They react to circumstances. They interpret events emotionally. They live inside narratives handed to them by culture, family, media. The master sees differently. The master sees patterns where others see chaos. The master sees opportunity where others see crisis. The master sees long arcs where others see short disruptions. This perceptual shift is what separates the strategically powerful from the perpetually reactive. Let me explain. When you are inexperienced, events feel personal. A rejection feels like humiliation. A market downturn feels like catastrophe. A competitor's success feels like threat. But as you deepen into mastery, you detach from immediate emotional interpretation. You observe instead of absorb. This observational distance is power. Because distance allows analysis. Analysis allows precision. Precision allows dominance. Look at history's great strategists. Napoleon in his early campaigns, Queen Elizabeth I navigating religious volatility, or industrial magnates restructuring entire sectors. Their strength was not brute force. It was perspective. They could zoom out, they could perceive structure, they understood that every event sits inside a larger pattern. This is what you must cultivate. Step back, study cycles, market cycle, reputation cycle. Industries cycle, power structures cycle, power structures cycle. When you understand cycles, you stop panicking at temporary downturns. You begin positioning during weakness. Most buy at the peak of excitement. Masters accumulate during doubt. Most quit during difficulty. Masters double down when fundamentals remain intact. This requires psychological conditioning. You must train yourself to become anti-fragile. When pressure increases, you grow sharper. When criticism appears, you analyze it instead of reacting to it. When uncertainty expands, you slow down instead of rushing. Slowing down in moments of chaos is rare. And rarity creates advantage. Now let us examine another dimension, strategic subtraction. In early phases, mastery is about accumulation, learning more, doing more, connecting more. But in advanced stages, mastery becomes subtraction, removing unnecessary complexity, removing weak alliances, removing distractions, removing ego-driven pursuits. Complexity weakens clarity. Clarity strengthens action. Observe the most powerful brands, systems, and individuals. They are simple at the core, not simplistic, but refined. Refinement is achieved by eliminating the non-essential. This applies financially as well. As wealth grows, so does temptation to diversify recklessly. But intelligent diversification is not scattering. It is strategic layering. You concentrate in areas of competence. You diversify for protection. You maintain liquidity for opportunity. You avoid emotional investments. At advanced levels, wealth preservation becomes as important as wealth creation. Because power loss through negligence is difficult to recover, and here is a subtle truth. The more powerful you become, the more invisible you should learn to be. Overexposure invites attack. Public ego attracts challengers. Quiet power endures longer. Think of individuals who wield immense influence yet rarely display it theatrically. They conserve mystique. Mystique increases perceived depth. Perceived depth increases leverage. Now let us talk about energy and rhythm. Mastery is not constant aggression, it is rhythmic. Periods of expansion, periods of consolidation, periods of observation. If you push relentlessly without recalibration, you burn out. If you rest excessively, you decay. Rhythm sustains longevity. Longevity compounds advantage. This is how dynasties form, not through explosive growth alone, but through disciplined continuity. Another essential element at this stage is mentoring. Teaching is not charity, it is strategic refinement. When you articulate principles to others, you sharpen them within yourself. When you observe others struggle, you remember your own blind spots. But choose mentees carefully. Invest in those who demonstrate discipline. Energy misallocated is lost leverage. Now let us address identity at the highest level. If your identity depends on constant winning, you will fear experimentation. But if your identity is rooted in growth, experimentation becomes natural. Experimentation keeps you ahead. Complacency places you behind. The master lives slightly ahead of their environment, not dramatically detached, but perceptually ahead. You anticipate trends. You study emerging technology. You observe generational shifts. You position before the crowd recognizes opportunity. This is strategic foresight. And foresight multiplies financial returns exponentially. Because the greatest gains occur at inflection points, but inflection points are visible only to those paying attention. Now imagine your life as a multi-decade strategic campaign. In year 1, growth is invisible. In year 5, it is measurable. In year 10, it is undeniable. In year 20, it appears inevitable. But inevitability is an illusion created by sustained discipline. Those who appear overnight are usually the result of invisible decades. Never compare your Chapter 3 to someone else's Chapter 20. Comparison drains focus. Focus builds compounding, and compounding, in skill, in reputation, in capital, creates asymmetries, the ultimate goal. You want outcomes disproportionately larger than effort. You achieve this through deep expertise, strategic positioning, ownership structures, network leverage, timing precision. At this level, mastery becomes less about proving and more about orchestrating. You move pieces quietly. You influence outcomes subtly. You build systems that operate without constant supervision. You think in architecture, not transactions. Architecture shapes environments. Transactions merely operate within them. And those who shape environments shape history. But remember this always, the higher you rise, the more self-awareness you require. Blind spots expand with scale. Create mechanisms for honest feedback. Audit your decisions. Question your assumptions. Adapt continuously. Because mastery is not static brilliance, it is dynamic evolution. And evolution is survival. In the next phase, we will integrate everything: skill, creativity, intuition, social intelligence, perception, finance, into a final synthesis: the psychology of lifelong mastery and enduring power. For now, understand this: the amateur seeks applause, the professional seeks income, the master seeks leverage, and leverage, once built properly, reshapes destiny. We arrive now at the final integration. If you have followed this path through apprenticeship, creative independence, intuitive intelligence, strategic perception, and architectural thinking, you begin to understand something profound. Mastery is not a career strategy, it is a way of being. It is a psychological orientation toward reality. Most people live reactively. Masters live intentionally. The difference seems subtle from the outside, but internally it is enormous. The reactive individual waits for clarity, waits for permission, waits for ideal circumstances. The master creates clarity through action. They understand that confusion is part of the process. They understand that discomfort is a signal of growth. They understand that time is either compounding for them or against them. Let us now synthesize everything into a coherent philosophy. First principle: accept the long arc. Mastery operates on long horizons. If you think in months, you will behave impulsively. If you think in years, you will behave strategically. If you think in decades, you will behave architecturally. Architectural thinking changes everything. Instead of asking, "How can I win now?" you ask, "How can I position myself so that winning becomes easier over time?" Positioning is superior to effort. Effort without positioning exhausts you. Positioning reduces friction. In financial life, this means building assets that appreciate. Equity in growing systems, intellectual property that scales, reputation that attracts opportunities, networks that open doors without application. You move from chasing to attracting. Attraction is leverage. Leverage is freedom. Second principle: own, don't rent your future. Renting your future means dependence on salary alone. It means dependence on one platform, one employer, one client. Ownership, even small at first, creates independence. Equity stakes, profit-sharing agreements, royalties, long-term contracts structured intelligently. Ownership compounds invisibly. Consumption depletes visibly. Choose compounding, but ownership demands patience. And patience requires emotional maturity, which brings us to the third principle: master your emotions before you attempt to master your field. Emotional instability destroys strategic thinking. Anger leads to impulsive moves. Fear leads to hesitation. Greed leads to overextension. Pride leads to blindness. Study your emotional triggers, not to suppress them, but to understand them. Awareness reduces reactivity. Reduced reactivity increases precision. Precision amplifies results. The fourth principle: maintain beginner's mind at advanced levels. The paradox of mastery is that the deeper you go, the more curious you become. If you believe you have arrived, decline begins. Instead, periodically dismantle your own assumptions. Enter unfamiliar environments. Study emerging technologies. Listen to younger thinkers. Power that does not evolve calcifies, and calcified power shatters under pressure. Fifth principle: build systems, not moments. Moments are exciting. Systems are profitable. A viral success may create attention. A system creates income. A brilliant performance may create applause. A repeatable framework creates legacy. Design repeatability into your life. Repeatable skill. Repeatable decision criteria. Repeatable investment discipline. Repeatable creative process. This reduces reliance on mood. Consistency beats intensity. Intensity is dramatic. Consistency is dominant. Now let us address the ultimate objective. Many pursue mastery to gain recognition. Others pursue it to gain wealth. Some pursue it to gain influence. But the deepest reward of mastery is internal sovereignty. Sovereignty is freedom from emotional chaos, freedom from dependency on validation, freedom from financial fragility, freedom from intellectual insecurity. When you possess sovereignty, you move differently. You negotiate calmly. You invest patiently. You decline opportunities confidently. You do not chase trends. You observe them. You do not fear competition. You outgrow it. Now imagine your life at age 70, not measured by titles, not measured by possessions, measured by depth. Did you fully develop your potential? Did you build something that outlasts you? Did you think independently? Did you maintain dignity under pressure? Did you convert knowledge into architecture? If the answer is yes, you have achieved mastery, not perfection. Mastery, and mastery is alive. It is adaptive. It is evolving. The journey never truly ends. Because every new level reveals new complexity. Every success introduces new challenges. Every decade requires reinvention. But reinvention becomes easier when you understand the core mechanics. Deep work, strategic patience, emotional control, ownership, architectural thinking, perceptual clarity. These form a self-reinforcing system. The more you practice them, the stronger they become. And strength built gradually becomes unshakable. Let me leave you with this final thought. Amateurs seek quick outcomes. Professionals seek consistent income. Masters seek leverage that compounds across time. If you commit to this path, not for applause, not for immediate reward, but for transformation, you will separate yourself from the vast majority. Because the vast majority seeks comfort, the master seeks growth. And growth, sustained long enough, becomes inevitability. Mastery is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself so completely that the external world begins to align with your internal order. That is power. That is freedom. And that is the ultimate expression of mastery.